welcome back. Thank you for joining us again for this edition of the Fight Plug. We're talking about UFC 271. We're going to be recapping everything that went down this past Saturday at the Toyota Center in Houston, Texas. Starting at the top of the card, Brandon, it's not, surprisingly, it's not so often that we get like the consensus number one versus number two challenging for the title at the top of the card. In this sport, oftentimes, like, it seems to definitely be about ratings, who's going to put more butts in seats and sell pay-per-views. This wasn't the case. Well, this is actually a rare case because it's both. I think both of these guys are needle movers as far as pay-per-view sales, and they are like the top of the game. It's kind of like accepted by everybody that it's Israel Adesanya, Robert Whittaker, and then there's a pretty big gap between them and the rest of the division. And they went ahead and entered the cage again this past Saturday for the second time. Robert Whittaker challenging to try and get his undisputed title back from Israel Adesanya, who he lost it to in 2019. It goes a lot better for Robert Whittaker than it did last time, but he still comes up short. He doesn't get the decision. It's a unanimous decision for Israel Adesanya. He ran into a little bit of after the first round, it looked like it was going to be kind of more of the same. He had some trouble in the first round. He got clipped and dropped. It didn't look like it was as impactful as a strike compared to the first fight, where in that first round he looked like he was literally out. Probably got woken up by hitting the ground. But nevertheless, though, I had it 4-1 for Israel. I gave maybe round 5 to Robert Whittaker, but not too many people seem to agree with me, or at the very least, a lot of people. I mean, there's plenty of people who agree with me, but there's more people than I was expecting who disagree and thought Robert Whittaker kind of got screwed here. Where do you fall as far as the decision goes?
Man, I was watching it, and just like in the normal way I watch it, and I was in and out of conversation with like some like family that was there with me, and they're just asking questions and whatever. Um, through watching it, seeing how everything went down, I was really impressed. Just like watching it right away, like in real time, was it really impressed with how Rob got through that first round and then rallied back and got his takedowns, and it seemed like he was landing a lot more than anyone had really expected for him to land usually, because Izzy was like a ghost in that last fight. He just was not there, but he was there for these punches. And I, when it came to decision, I was like, man, Izzy won it again. Like, what's gonna happen? That sucks for Rob. And then I don't know. I usually try not to look at too many comments or social media comments, because it's weird. And I was also kind of like, it was almost like I had bet on Izzy to win and he won, so I was just like, you're a genius, dude. This is what happens. And then the next day, I'm at the gym and I'm like watching it again, and there's like music and people, and you're just kind of focusing on it, and I was like, whoa, like this was a lot closer than I thought it was.
Mm-hmm.
And then you just start watching breakdowns and like of respected people and what they thought, and it was a lot closer than what I felt watching it in real time. I will say that. I don't know if I'll go as far to say that it was a robbery, but I do think if Rob had been the champ and then the fight went the other way, they would have just gave it to him. I think if he would have been the champion, they probably would have gave it to him.
That's an interesting observation. Yeah, because I feel like I don't buy into the belief that, like, the whole idea that you have to beat the champ to be the champ. You know what I mean? Like, you got to finish him. But regardless of whether or not I believe in that, it's clear that the judges, to some extent, seem to believe in that. Like, most cases, a close decision isn't going to be enough to dethrone the champion, it seems like. And yeah, like I said, I had it 4-1. I've heard plenty of people say that they had it like clean sweep for Israel Adesanya. I don't know if I could say that. I feel like Whittaker definitely got a lot stronger towards the end of the fight.
Man, he looked great. I mean, that's amazing to be in there with arguably the best in the world, who has already beaten you, and to make it to where a majority of people, at least from what I've seen, think he won.
Yeah.
And I can't really I don't think so, but I can't argue with anyone who tells me that. I couldn't plausibly and say like, nope, this is why, this
Yeah.
is it. You're wrong. I can't.
Yeah,
So
a
it's crazy.
4 rounds to 1 makes it sound like the fight was a lot more one-sided than it really was.
Yeah.
There could be a fight where somebody wins every round unanimously,
Yeah.
and it could still be a razor thin
Hmm.
margin of
You're
victory.
right.
It's just all it comes down to is how close those rounds are. More often than not, we get split decisions in those cases because it's just so rare when every round is like
Hmm.
super super close that every judge
Yeah.
is going to agree. um I don't know if, yeah, I need to rewatch the fight again. I
Yeah.
haven't seen it since
It's
Saturday.
interesting, man. It really was interesting to me because I was just like, yep, you were right, dog. Good job,
Exactly.
Brandon. You fucking took it the right way. I mean,
Everybody's
everyone's
stupid but
stupid
me.
except for me. Yeah, that's a go-to thought, man. And watching it again and then hearing, like, I won't say anyone's name or whatever. I mean, it doesn't matter, but hearing respected MMA vets, respected MMA commentators, and even the not so respected ones kind of give their argument as to like, dude, this guy got fucking robbed. And then
Mhm.
I'm like, well, okay. So then I go back and watch it a third time, but through a different, like through a YouTube channel. And I'm like, whoa, dude, this was. And so I come away with it thinking Izzy won. Still can't say like it was crazy. Won't run out and yell at anyone for saying that they were wrong. But I'm very impressed with Robert Whitaker and how well he fought. Man, he's. It's so crazy how that is. Like there's, I had heard today that there's no other sport where the number one and the number two are just so far away from everyone else, but there's really no. I mean, they'll fight again at some point,
Mhm.
maybe, but why won't they just run it back next week? You know, like
Yeah.
why wouldn't they just do that? And they can't. There's no one. Would you really want? I probably would see. I probably would watch it, but how could they justify that? You know?
For me, that largely comes down to whether or not there's another like deserving contender like on the horizon, like that's waiting or on deck for a title
Yeah,
shot. I'm not typically the biggest fan of instant rematches in MMA.
yeah,
There's definitely a place for them, but I feel like classically the UFC's really just like been really uncreative about that, and we've had way too many instant
yeah.
rematches and instant
No, I agree with
trilogies.
you, man. Yeah,
And I mean, we might be looking. I might be looking back on it a little bit more fondly because we're going through the whole Davis and Figueiredo, Brandon
yeah.
Moreno thing right now, and we're talking
Exactly.
about a
Came to my
fourth
head
fight.
too. Yeah,
So I might be looking at it through rose-colored glasses a little bit more. But yeah, I think it might be a hard sell. But like I said, surprisingly, going away from that fight, I didn't think there would be as many people clamoring that Robert Whitaker won that fight. And I'm glad I
yeah,
got your input on it because before I got to sit down and talk with you, I hadn't really had a chance to talk to anybody else about it. And I was
yeah.
thinking, like, is this one of those cases where, well, there's a couple different factors. One, Robert Whitaker is beloved. Like,
He is by me. Both of us. Yeah,
yeah, he's seriously like one of the greatest guys in the sport. I don't know anybody who can dislike the guy. He's super sweet. He's an amazing fighter. It's not just all personality. He's not a Darren Till. You know what I
yeah.
mean? So he's super popular. I think a lot of people are rooting for Robert Whitaker. We both picked Israel Adesanya. In truth, I was rooting for Robert
We're so
Whitaker.
nice about it. We're like, we fucking thought he'd lose.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And I mean, you were going on about Israel Adesanya being on steroids and stuff. You know what I mean? So it's like
yeah, yeah.
our picks aren't necessarily who we're rooting for. Um,
Right.
and so I thought it might have been a bit of that, coupled with the idea that he'd lost so he lost so badly in their first fight. I don't think a
It
lot
was
of people
bad.
were really expecting as much from Robert Whitaker here. I think a lot of people had an idea of like what he might have to do differently to get the win.
Yeah.
But I feel like I see it a lot in mixed martial arts where somebody comes in and kind of exceeds expectations, and suddenly people think that they won because they did better than anyone expected them to, but that might not necessarily be the case. Um,
Sure.
but you're saying that you rewatched the fight though, and you kind of have
Three.
a little bit
It's
of a
like
different
three
perspective on it.
times. Yeah,
Yeah,
and maybe I watched it that many times, like trying to find it. Do you know what I mean? Like
yeah,
trying to like, because I just love the guy so much, trying to
hmm
find it, and then. Not that I don't like Israel Adesanya. I do think I respect him as one of the greatest fighters to ever live. I mean, and it's super early to say that maybe, but he's. I mean, it's just there. But
I trust his
maybe
mentality in the sport.
right.
You know, he
Yes.
might be a
Yeah.
little bit of a specialist. He's definitely
Yeah.
flawed. You know, as far as like
Yeah.
if there's ends up being a real powerhouse grappler at 180 who makes 185 who goes up the ranks, but
Like a Cuban Olympian that he just beat the that he beat the
right,
brakes off.
right,
Yeah.
exactly. But I trust. We've seen that he knows how to lose gracefully. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not something
True.
that's going to get into
Yeah.
his head. He's not going to lose that mental battle once he faces his any bit of adversity.
Yeah.
So yeah, I trust him to stick around and be a dominant champion, and
Yeah.
could definitely ascend to goathood. Goathood.
Yeah. But it is odd that um, I think Anderson's dip was so fast after like what happened with Maya and then with Weidman, how weird it was, and it was
Hmm.
like people just weren't engaging with him, and so he just kind of was like thrown back by that maybe,
Well, don't
but
forget Chael Sonnen beat him. Chael
yeah,
Sonnen's never
he
lost a round.
did.
Yeah,
Yeah. Dang man, that's crazy. That was a crazy fight to
yeah,
think about. Like I would hope to see because we haven't seen Izzy in a Chelsea because he was very close to
yeah.
freaking beating Anderson like twice. He was super close to it, and that triangle was amazing. That was like there aren't many buzzer beaters that like that Yair elbow or like that triangle. Man, he was so close to it. But I would love to see Izzy in a fight like that. I just don't know if his style sets him up for that kind of like I guess no, Gastelum was pretty close, I would say, but I always thought he was winning going into that last round.
Yeah.
But I guess the point. I'm sorry to cut you off, Doc,
No, no, no,
but
you're good.
I get the point I was trying to make was I've never seen this like, and he maybe it's just it's a business side of it where I win tonight and I'll look better next time kind of thing from him where it's like I'm gonna win and he's done that more and more it feels like since that Kelvin fight
Mhm.
where he's just like in there to win it and he's business like about it and with fighting it's kind of hard to watch that where it's like business making business decisions in there, you know.
I saw some people, and I like that you mentioned that business decisions. I
Right.
saw some people that kind of, I feel like Israel Adesanya mentioned before going into this fight in some of the press that he had just signed a new deal going into this fight. He's going to be getting paid a lot of money. I think there was a little bit more attention paid to that after the fight,
Yeah.
but you know, I
Yeah.
think that news did drop before the fight, and a lot of the criticism that I heard coming out of this fight, and granted, a lot of this is comments on Instagram and shit like that, but some of
Yeah.
it was also by Iron Mike Chandler
Yeah.
publicly commenting on Instagram, hey, you know what I mean? Champions are starting to go out there, and as long as you don't get like, as long as you don't get completely ran
Gaethje
over,
said the same thing too, right?
right? Both
Gaethje.
of them kind of came out and said the same thing. But I wish I had prepared the tweet and had it in front of me so I could read it off. But Mike Chandler basically said, "Hey
I
man,
know what you're talking
you're
about.
getting paid a lot of money now, so don't you dare play it safe. Like you need to get."
Yeah.
And he's since kind of redacted his words a little bit and said, "Well, you know, you just have to take a little bit of risks and stuff like that." How do you feel? Do you kind of agree with Mike Chandler there, or do you think this is a little bit of him playing company man with Israel Adesanya?
I think it might be the wrong guy to say that necessarily, seeing as how like but he loses and going all out there, and then he loses almost everything in such dramatic fashion.
Hmm.
And his fights are amazing. Chandler's an amazing fighter. I love him. I can't wait to see him fight again.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like maybe it was the message was lost on the dude like that. If it say it would have been, you know, take anybody down the line that's the champ now, or like say like well, Usman would never say it, but and Ngannou would never say it, but someone that's a champ down the line that's like, hey man, like we're over here like trying to make these fights awesome. You're more than capable of making these fights like highlight real Sports Center top 10 stuff, and you're not doing it because you want to maintain
Hmm.
your contract status. So maybe you shouldn't do that. So
Yeah.
well, Mike Chandler's like that guy, you know, he'll he'll do whatever he has to do to win. So
In a way,
it's
it's in
different.
right. In a way, it's almost a little bit of a compliment to Israel Adesanya
Right.
because
Yeah.
that at least means that Michael Chandler believes that Israel Adesanya could have went out there and put Robert Whitaker away. Maybe something he was seeing in the
Yeah.
fight tells him like, "Hey man, you're better than this. I know you can style on
Yeah.
this guy." So maybe he's coming at it from that
Sure.
angle.
Yeah.
There's a little bit of controversy, not directly related to this fight and the decision, with Michael Bisping, and this is something I wanted to kind of save a little bit
Oh,
for
right.
like a news or headline segment, but I'll just mention it
Yeah.
now since we're on this fight. Michael Bisping filled in on relatively short notice for Joe Rogan,
Yeah.
who had a
Right.
scheduling conflict, um,
Yeah.
and he filled in on just under 48 hours notice, like it was between a day or two. And
Hmm.
he caught a lot of flack because a lot of people who were saying that Whitaker should have won this fight were saying that Michael Bisping was super biased, and that he was not calling it fair. He was like swinging from Israel Adesanya's nuts,
Hmm.
and really ragging on him. Do you feel like what
Joe Rogan would have did the same thing.
yeah, I'm telling people, go back and watch the Israel Adesanya versus Jan
Yeah.
Blachowicz fight and listen to Joe Rogan pretend
Yes.
that Israel Adesanya
Yes.
is winning that fight and blowing,
Right.
like, you know what I mean?
And then
So,
just moving his feet from left to a southpaw to an orthodox
oh, those
stance. It's like,
feints.
oh, look
He's
at that.
he's biting on those feints
Yeah.
left and
Yeah.
yeah.
Come on.
Um
Come on, man. I
do,
love Joe Rogan as much as the next person, but he would have done worse. It would have been worse. Him. I can't stand when him and it almost kills like super good fights, and both of them are great commentators. But when him and Carl Winslow get into that whole ball washing of whoever it is, it makes me sick, dude.
Daniel Cormier
Yeah,
really starts to think that he's also a funny man and
yeah,
like starts to ham it up way too much with Joe Rogan, and yeah,
yeah,
them together is a bad recipe in my
yeah.
opinion.
And I didn't see anything wrong with. I mean, it's still like people, but those same people, I don't know. Like, I guess if they're professional pundits or professionals, which I didn't see too many of those people making the. I saw a lot of like the Facebook or YouTube commenters making that
Mhm.
distinction. Like when you're working at Carl's Jr., like you're not nice to the people you hate. Like, come on, dude, this is their job, and millions of people are like jobs are at stake. The homie had a scheduling problem for saying the wrong thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
It's a lot of research
yeah,
to do to get ready to
yeah,
call a whole night of fights, like
yeah,
15 fights on 2 days notice. I mean,
yeah. So I mean, in a way, like we're arguing that um, the ball washing gets out of control, and it does, but it's not something to where I think Bisbing did anything wrong or did anything different than Joe Rogan would have done. If not, you know,
yeah, it's definitely not unique to Michael Bisping. Like we've
right?
heard all commentators kind of fall victim to that. A lot of them are still active competitors in this sport. So, you know what I
Yeah,
mean? And or they may not be, but they still kind of train with certain guys in certain gyms. You know what I mean?
right.
Michael Bisping, I know he has he kind of tends to call it a little bit biased for Cheeto Vera and
Right.
Mackenzie Dern because they're kind of out of the same gym that he's been training at in California. So
Mm-hmm.
that's going to happen. I feel like a lot of the flack that Michael Bisping was getting, because I'm listening to it and I'm thinking like, okay, this isn't Robert Whitaker fans. I mean, it could be.
Yeah.
This could definitely be some Robert Whitaker fans.
Okay.
It's definitely not commentator nerds like me,
Yeah.
because I think if you're a real nerd about commentary, you probably already recognize that maybe it wasn't Michael Bisping's best night, but he's
Yeah.
certainly not the worst commentator, and it's certainly
Yeah.
not some travesty that he's replacing Joe Rogan for the
Right.
evening. I
Right.
feel like it's Joe Rogan fans who felt like
Yeah.
this was a slight, who kind of looking into things too much and thinking that this was like the UFC censoring Joe Rogan or getting rid of him and replacing him and stuff. I don't think that was the
Right.
case at all.
Yeah, that would never. It would be the exact opposite. He said it in the Dana said it in the press conference that he actually did this time, which is great.
Mm,
That hey, he can come back whenever he wants. Man, that is a very good point because I haven't thought about it that way. I didn't really when you and I talked before this about like, did you want to talk about the Bisbee thing? And like I was like, oh, and I had thought about, I had read it, I saw it, didn't think too much of it. My initial thought was Rogan would have been worse anyway, so what does it
right.
matter?
And
And then now that I think hearing you talk about it, like how much of that is a Whitaker fan and how much of it is just the swinging off Joe Rogan's nuts, feeling like he's been sliding. And it's like you can go back and forth on like the Joe Rogan issue and how all that's going and what side you take on that. Everybody has a freaking opinion on that, and it is what it is, dog.
Yeah.
But in this case, I agree with you, man. Like, there's a certain level of expectation you take of like, okay, this guy, like when Dom does it, I just know how he's gonna be. When Felder does it, you just kind of know how they're gonna be. When Anik does it, you know, Anik's gonna pull out the mediation papers from their child support hearings. Like you just know what they're gonna say.
Yeah.
And so like I didn't see anything. So yeah, man, I did not think about that. Maybe it was just that boiling over. In our society and in general, everyone's just boiling over, and they're waiting for that one little thing to just put it over the top.
Because Mike Bisping said that he received some death threats.
Yeah.
And he mentioned that on his the Fighter versus the Writer, Damon Martin's podcast. He said that he had actually received death threats because of, and he didn't really get super specific, but he kind of said it was for everything, for his biased commentary, for, you know, replacing Joe Rogan and stuff like that. And when I heard that, now granted, Michael Bisping could have been over exaggerating. He said,
I think so.
He said death threats. He pluralized it. Maybe it was a death threat. Who knows what the actual nature of those death threats were? Obviously, we wouldn't expect any of them to be serious. But I hear death threat, and like I said, I broke it down into those three groups. Does that feel like a Robert Whitaker fan? Does that feel like a commentator nerd? I know I've sent out my fair share of death threats over bad commentary.
Of course.
Or does, you know,
Michael Travello has blocked me on every single.
If I hear you say
platform,
"Good night, Irene," one more fucking exactly. Yeah.
I know, 2 watches, dude. Get over it.
We get it. You're Mr. Worldwide. You need multiple time zones on your fucking wrist.
Michael Travello, please do the show.
We love you, Michael Travello. Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyways, yeah, I thought that was kind of interesting. I look forward to seeing more of Michael Bisping. I think
he's good.
He's kind of growing into one of my favorite commentators.
Yeah.
And I think I want to see them mix it up a little bit more. I don't need Mike Bisping to replace Joe Rogan, but I would like to see him on some pay-per-views once in a while. I really like Anik, Bisping, Felder. Most of the time we get Fitzgerald, Anik, Fitzgerald, Bisping, and Felder. I want to see Laura Sanko get on the desk. I think it's you know, long overdue that she gets her shot.
Sure.
But anyways, I'm not going to go on too much about commentary.
No.
We also.
I'm glad you did, though, because I did not think about it, of how much of it is just they're standing for Joe Rogan, and it could have been literally anyone in that seat, and they would have just gone off on. So I love that point you made, man. That's good.
Probably, but I have to rewatch it still. I might rewatch it and think like, oh, Michael Bisping was kind of fucking like
they all do.
Juggling Israel's balls in his mouth a little bit.
They just all do, and it's hard to not. I can honestly say, being in a room like that, a title fight, you've already seen some crazy finishes up until then. Your heart's going, everything's going. Who knows if he had I don't know what they do, if they partake in any substances or what they do leading up, but like, who knows what. And I mean, they start at what, like 3:00 in the afternoon, and it's at 9:00 at night.
Calling fights for 7-8 hours.
Gone, dude. And you're on that last one, and it's freaking. These two dudes are just amazing, and they're fighting in a cage in front of you. Like, what do these guys want, really? You know what I mean? It's not like football. I can see football where these guys show up, it's cushy, they're in this lounge, and then they're just, you can tell they're phoning it in, just ball washing whoever is the best player because it's the easiest thing to do. In this case, this is super hard commentary to do, and the styles are so different, everything's so different, the names, the nationalities, it can't be easy.
Oh, good point about that, the pronunciations and all that stuff. Having to know, okay, once this fight wraps up, I got to step in the cage and interview this guy who just fought for potentially 15 to 25 minutes.
What am I going to say on my pod? What am I going to say on my breakdown? What am I going to say in my tweets? What the, it's got to be crazy.
Yeah. Before we get off of the Israel Adesanya Robert Whitaker fight, what do you feel like was the biggest, like, kind of what was the downfall for Robert Whitaker in this fight to you? Like, do you feel like He didn't grapple enough because he tried, but a lot of those takedowns weren't really working for him, and he couldn't
Yeah.
keep it there. I still feel like that was kind of the key to victory for him. What do you feel like were his shortcomings in this fight?
Just not that one shot, I guess. Just not getting that one shot that kind of put Izzy back and out of, because he was able to kind of move in and out the same way. Not as good as maybe he did in the past, and whatever Robert was doing was different. You can tell it kind of scrambled Izzy's like whole going into the fight, what expectations of where he's going to be and move. He was doing something, definitely doing something different, which I'm not sure either two would cop um, to admitting like, oh, it was this that did it, oh, it was that, because they're still going to be cagey about it. But um, I think you're right, just doing something with the takedowns, which is the obvious take that everyone's been taking. Like, you're going to take them down, you got to do something with it, which is kind of weird considering is Adesanya's takedown defense is really good.
Hmm.
Um, and I guess it just showed too in the judging, like, and which I kind of like as a Muay Thai person or someone who enjoys Muay Thai more than wrestling, would be that the leg kicks kind of outweighed just a random takedown. Like,
I think that was definitely one of the things
yeah,
that I mean, until I rewatched the fight, where I feel like this is one of those eye openers where a lot of people are still underrating leg kicks more than I would have
yeah,
assumed or
right,
expected, and which has kind of surprised me because I thought like in 2022, and we've seen so many fights finish via calf kicks. We've seen dudes with
right.
drop
It's
foot struggling to not like step on their
mm-hmm.
limp foot. Like I thought like people would have woken up a little bit more to leg kicks, but.
Right, and his kicks were good, and they were right there. They were perfect. I think that's it. I think whatever Rob was doing in there, like I said, these two dudes are the only ones that will know what it was.
Mhm.
If they were in a closed room together and they talk about it, they would admit to it. But Rob was doing something different, and what kept that fight from going flipping was those kicks. Whether they in landing or Rob thinking about that kick.
Mhm.
That kick's going to come, and is it going to come through my head this time instead of. So I think that was the neutralizing factor, and it was the thing that I obviously gave the judges the enough to give it to Izzy. So
What kind of win streak do you think that you would need to see Robert Whitaker put together after this fight to get him back in the cage for a third time with Israel Adesanya?
just one good fight, one really good fight. If he knocks, I mean, if he goes in there and um, there's a few guys coming up there.
I
I
have
think,
the middleweight
yeah,
rankings up in front of me
yeah.
if you want me to
Well,
name anyone off.
it's not going to be Brunson, right? Or do you think? I mean,
Cannonier.
there's no way.
We'll
Yeah,
get to that. There,
yeah,
I think he's definitely next in line for Israel
yeah,
Adesanya. And
yeah.
Israel Adesanya,
Said
said his
so.
name in the pros
Yeah.
conference. So we got Israel, Whitaker, Cannonier, Strickland at 4. Brunson drops to number 5. We'll talk about that in a bit. Jack Hermanson, uh, Darren Till, Vittori at 8, Gastelum at 9. Gastelum really probably shouldn't be at 9 anymore. And I'm going off of
No,
Topology's rankings.
no, you're right.
And Uriah Hall at number 10.
I mean, we talked about it in the last one, right? With Strickland, like who we would fight next, probably where that would go. Maybe,
We did. Honestly, I don't even really remember who I said I would like to
yeah,
see Strickland fight next. I think I
yeah.
might have said the loser or
Of Brunson
of
and of Cannonier.
yeah, because I think it was going to be pretty obvious that the winner of that fight was going to be up next for the title shot. So
I think Whitaker should move weights either up or down. I think maybe just to do it. I don't know if he can, if that makes sense.
up would be interesting.
Up would be interesting.
Yeah.
I don't think it would, especially with the way things are going in that division now.
Mhm.
He might as well just try it. You know what I mean? And with the Kings out of there, and because there's no better time than now, and he might like it. Maybe he can fight. I don't know. See, I don't see. I should know if I'm going to make this take. I should know how his cuts go and what. But it always seems like he's a pro. He's always there on weight.
Mhm.
Izzy can't move up, and Izzy won't move down. I don't think. Doesn't have to. Um, because I just don't think his frame can handle going up and being successful.
Mhm.
I mean, we've shown it. He might do it again as he gets older and maybe a little heavier. But I think Rob should probably move up. That'd be interesting, and maybe just start there and then see how things go with Izzy. Because I think the fight game's so weird, and so things could change within a year. So if he goes up, wins a couple fights there, looks good, and then things kind of change to where Cannonier has fought and he's fought and defended, or he's won and defended, and Rob's up there or has won a couple times, and you go, hey, why don't I just go back and handle some business right now? Then I'm in line to maybe double, then that I would love to see something like that.
A lot of interesting options there. I think, yeah, I'd be excited whether he goes up or down. Light heavyweight, I'd never considered light heavyweight since he fought at welterweight before.
Right.
But light heavyweight, I mean, light heavyweight's far from the darling division that it used to be, like the premier division.
Yeah.
It's pretty bad right now.
It
But
is. It really is. It's crazy that it is too. And is that? I could be completely wrong, but that's one of Bellator's stronger divisions. No, light heavyweight now, is it? Am I wrong?
they have an established champion.
Yeah.
To be honest, I'm pretty checked out on Bellator. I
Yeah.
wouldn't.
Who
I couldn't
cares?
even name you the top five
But I always
Bellator
think of that.
fighters.
I always think of that like, well, if it's not good in the UFC, it has to be good somewhere else. And
That's an interesting way of thinking about it. It's like if there's a void here, that's because there's talent
yeah,
somewhere. Yeah.
yeah,
I think I'm looking at the top five. The top 15. Light heavyweight: Glover, Jan Blachowicz, Jiri Prochazka, Rakic, Ankalaev are at the top five. After those,
all really good fighters,
yeah,
all really good guys, but doesn't none. Jiri's name was like, well, Glover's name, your heart beats because like, oh, Glover, and then Jiri's name was like, oh, they're fighting each other. And then after that, you're just like, whoa.
I could definitely see him having success against Rakic, Magomed Ankalaev. That's a tough one. I feel like that guy's
That's a
the
tough fight.
future champion at that
Yep.
division.
I agree with you.
But if they wanted to throw him in there with Anthony Lionheart Smith,
Mm-hmm.
I'd be all over that fight. I would also
Anthony
be.
would take it.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I would also be very, very excited about a Robert Whitaker versus Colby Covington fight at 170 pounds too.
Ooh, ooh, man.
So, I mean, it's not often. It's kind of funny. We're talking at length about all the options that are on the table for the loser of this fight.
Yeah.
When oftentimes it's like, well, let's hope they can recover. But I think
He's so
the sky's
good.
the limit for Whitaker still. Yeah.
He's so good, man. There's nothing about that fight. After he lost to Adesanya and all of the things he had gone through with his digestive and his health, kind of getting to that, and then he lost that way. I was like, man, that was such an amazing guy and such a great fighter, and that sucks. And I was almost writing him off, and then
Yeah.
he literally, in a lot of people's eyes, and justifiably so, almost won that fight. Might have won that fight.
Yeah. You totally wrote him off. You didn't believe in Whitaker
No,
at
not
all.
you. Like almost, you almost did. Like
Yeah.
I guess it was just a sinking feeling, not a write off, but a sinking feeling. Like man, like after all that guy's been through, and and then Izzy comes up, he's so cool and that's just that just sucked. It did just suck. And then there's nothing you can say. I can hate all I want steroids. And,
I think it hurts. It hurts a little extra too because we saw the absolute fucking wars that Robert Whitaker had to go through with Yoel Romero. You know what I mean? Like if anybody
sapped some of Yoel's strengths and then let Izzy kind of. A lot of the guys that were fighting like half-heartedly because Robert Whitaker had taken their soul at some point. And
exactly.
He's like, oh, you won't be needing this, and he just like took the rest of it.
Yeah, he softened up that division for Israel
he sure
Adesanya.
did. Tenderized it at the very least.
Well, for the co-main event, we had some heavyweight action. This was a really, really exciting one that I think pretty much everybody on the face of planet Earth predicted would not go the distance. I feel like we always kind of curse ourselves whenever we just say, like, there's just no way this fight goes the distance.
Yeah.
Always does. I kind of mentioned that in our last episode. But we were wrong on our predictions on this one. Derek Lewis absolutely puts the screws to Tai Tuivasa for the
Hmm.
better part of a round,
Yeah.
and kind of throws everything in the kitchen sink at Tai Tuivasa and really tested the guy. This was probably one of the biggest question marks I had about Tai coming into this fight. Is
Hmm.
I know the kid can throw. He's faster. He's a little bit more athletic. He might not look it necessarily
Hmm.
than Derek Lewis. The benefits of being a little bit of a smaller heavyweight, not having as long of a career, not dealing with as many
Hmm.
injuries. But the big
Hmm.
question mark for me was going to be, can he take a shot from Derek Lewis? And over the course of 3 rounds, 15 minutes, we knew he was going to take some. There was without
Yeah.
question, and he did. And in his post-fight press conference, when he was asked if he felt like he was in any danger at that point, he said, "No. I mean, I wasn't worried. It wasn't really hurting, but I knew I couldn't stay there. I knew if I
Yeah.
stayed there, I was going to be going to sleep. So I
Right.
was just thinking about getting to my feet."
Yeah.
He does that, gets back to his feet, lands a killer elbow, standing elbow to Derek Lewis, and just slumps him. He just falls
Yep.
over. Where did the
That was
wheels?
crazy.
Yeah, where did the wheels fall off for Derek Lewis here?
First and foremost, I want to apologize and say that I was dead wrong because you brought it up. I think you brought it up, kind of wanting me to either reaffirm it or kind of go out. But you're like, how? What is that going to be like? He's fighting in his hometown. He's already thrown up a shitty performance in his hometown. Is it going to be too much for him? And I said, absolutely not. He's been in every situation. He's done every, and he was winning that fight up until that point that he didn't. But I think I mean he was wrestling. He was holding him down. I mean
That's
he
right. He was
Harambe.
wrestling. Yeah.
Yeah, he Harambe tied to Iwasa. Like he had it looked like in my mind's eye, it looked like he just grabbed him, and when he yanked him down and was ground and pounding him, it looked like a street fight. Like he grabbed that guy, threw him on the ground, and was just pounding him.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, whoa, man. And then that didn't finish it. And I think maybe he goes, well, I mean, that's what I got. I don't know what
Motivation
I'm gonna do now.
zapped.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and maybe it was an adrenaline dump. Maybe it was the opposite of like, he was just so pumped up, and then he's like, "Man, I'm doing good, and I'm doing it," and then the guy didn't.
He didn't go away.
Good didn't go away, and then all that dumps. And um, I've never been in any type of anything close to a professional cage fight. I've never been into any type of like, but I've been in situations where like you're training, you feel good, you're working hard, everything else you've gotten up until that point you've been able to handle. You get to the day of, and then your mind just you dump all of your adrenaline off into that moment, and then you just have nothing, and it just like it's weird. It's like a dream, and you're just not able to put your full effort into it. And I think maybe that happened. So I have to apologize. Maybe not apologize, but just say I was wrong in thinking that it didn't get to him because it obviously did.
I don't know if I actually agree with you. I totally agree that it does seem like Derek Lewis threw everything at Ty,
Yeah,
and then once he realized, like, fuck, he's not going away.
yeah,
And now because Derek Lewis, not a guy who like throws punches with the intent that he's going to stick around into later rounds. So I think there was a little bit of a shock there, and that might have zapped his confidence. It looked like, and that's
yeah,
kind of where Ty took over. But I don't know if the Houston thing really played as much of a factor as I thought it might. Because
yeah,
that was something I was a little bit worried going into this fight. But I mean,
yeah,
I picked Derek Lewis also. We both picked Derek Lewis. Um,
yeah.
but I feel like he came
I
out.
didn't take that fight in my parlay though. I stayed way the fuck away
Oh,
from
you
that,
did.
and I didn't even bet. I didn't even bet on like what we had talked about, where we're like, yeah, I'm down for that. I'm down for that. And then like I looked at it, it's like I'm not fucking doing it.
I forgot that you another little example of how I mentioned to you in our show notes in our chat
Yeah.
that I felt like I wasn't doing enough listening last
Oh, that's
episode.
funny.
I realized that you had said, "Hey, let's do it together. Let's do that bet," and I was like, "Oh, he literally was like, hey, let's put our money together and throw a
No,
bet
I
down." And
looked at it like after we were done. I looked at it and I looked at the odds and they weren't as juicy as I thought they were. I
Mhm.
don't know them off the top of my head. And then I go, I'm not, and I'm
It
not
was.
putting my fucking money.
Yeah, we were thinking of. I remember what it was now. We were thinking about potentially putting a bet down for that fight to go to decision, and we would have
Yeah,
been
on
so fucking
Tuivasa
wrong.
to
Yeah,
win by decision, right? Yeah,
yeah.
stupid, stupid, and I'm glad I didn't. I stayed fucking way away from that fight
Yeah.
on any type of betting on any level. It never even crossed my mind to bet on that fight.
Mhm.
But man, it was such a good one. It was cool.
So yeah, like I was saying, I'm not 100% sure because the fight lasted for. Let me pull it up. I had it right in front of me. The fight finished round two, a minute and 40 in. I felt like Derek Lewis was winning most of that fight for like
Until he did, yeah,
most of that
almost all
fight.
of it.
Yeah, he was performing like you would expect Derek Lewis to perform at any point.
Maybe
Like
for 10
great.
seconds he wasn't.
Yeah.
He looked great. He looked amazing. I was like, man, he looked good. We were talking about it. He was healthy. He looked. I mean, with both of these guys, he looked slimmer. He looked like he was in a lot better shape than he had been. He
My,
was wrestling.
yeah. He was wrestling. Yeah, that was what tripped me out too.
It wasn't like, Curtis Blades or anybody, but I mean, he was wrestling, and then that ground
kind of
pound looked evil. That put something in my heart, dude. When his tie was kind of on his belly, and he was like almost like, maybe I'm like over making it more dramatic than it was, but it looked like he was like almost standing up over him and just raining on him.
Yeah,
and his head was just flying back.
I actually thought
like,
my pay-per-view that I totally paid for kind of froze up and skipped a little bit during that part.
Yeah. ESPN app, dude. That one
right?
It's terrible.
Come on, ESPN. So it came back when Derek Lewis was on top, raining down. Mm-hmm. And I thought, oh shit, the fight's over. Like I totally missed what happened, but he's about to win this fight, and then it didn't. So I hope so much. I'm not so confident or sure about what's next for Tai Tuivasa here because he breaks in to the top 5, the top 3, I think, because I think Derek Lewis was ranked number 3.
He said he had no idea. They're like, "Who are you gonna fight, man? Now you're top 3." He's someone in the top 5. He's like, "Who the fuck's in the top 5?"
Right? Yeah. Like what the fuck even is like the top of the welterweight division right now? Stipe Miocic. Yeah, Stipe Miocic was just sworn in as a full-time firefighter in Cleveland. I forgot what city in Cleveland. So I mean,
Cleveland is a city.
Yeah.
In Ohio, you mean?
Excuse me. In Cleveland, in actual Cleveland.
In Cleveland. Right.
Yeah. I meant to say Ohio, but
sorry to Big Doggy on that one too. Sorry about that.
It's all. But so now he's conceivably going to be training less in MMA. I like Stipe Miocic. When I read that, it made me want to go like, Stipe, this is why people don't care about you. Like, this is why nobody is like, you're not in high demand, and you should be. You're one of the greatest heavyweights we've ever seen. You're the first heavyweight to get 3 consecutive title defenses in the UFC. You should be a hotter commodity. And honestly, this is also the UFC kind of dropping the ball a little bit too, because it's like, yo, your heavyweight champion was a volunteer firefighter. Like, you should be able to parlay that into more attention. You know what I mean? Get a little like more sympathy views, anything like that.
Than a weird Manscaped commercial.
Exactly. Yeah. So I feel like I feel like Stipe's career has been pretty mishandled by not only himself but the UFC as well on both ends. So he's in limbo, you know what I mean? He says he's not retired. He specifically said, this doesn't mean I'm retired, but it just means people are going to care less because they know that you are literally working a full-time job and you are a part-time fighter now. John Jones said, hey, I'm down to go with Stipe. So, you know, he's probably, they're not going to give Tai Tuivasa to John Jones. Like, they're trying to figure out what's going on at the top of the division, and I feel like this is an instance where Tai Tuivasa might just have to sit on his hands or knock out the winner of. Let me pull up heavyweight.
He can't fight Curtis Blades. Do not give Curtis.
They need to keep him the fuck away from Curtis Blades, but I feel like that's going to be the fight that makes the most sense. Where are my heavyweight rankings?
I mean, Tuivasa and Cyril would make. I mean, it would be. I don't know.
It'd be a tough fight, but it would make more sense, and I think that's probably what's going to happen. I just feel like when the UFC figures out what's actually really going to be happening with Ngannou after, let's say, they make a deal, they make a play to try and be like, hey, play ball with us. If he refuses, I think they're going to try and get Cyril Gane and John Jones in the cage. Even though there's already been a little bit of talk with Stipe, I just kind of feel like they still really believe in Cyril Gane's star power and his ability.
Yeah. That has to be a bargaining chip to Stipe thing, because a lot of times you see it in other sports too, where they're talking about when either whether it's a trade or a contract or a free agent going somewhere, and then just the exact opposite happens, and you're like, what the hell? We're like, well, we kind of put that in the media to like lower the price or raise the price in one way or another, so you never really know what's behind all that.
Yeah. How did you feel about? Well, we'll go ahead and move on now. Unless you have any closing thoughts about Derek Lewis and where. Oh, you know what? Scratch that. I have another thought about Derek Lewis that I wanted to share, and I really, really hope that. And I mean, he doesn't deserve it, but I really, really hope that they match him up with Greg Hardy.
Oh,
He's wanted that fight. He's mentioned Greg Hardy's
yeah,
name before. I think a lot of people
yeah.
want to see that fight. It would be giving
Speaking
Derek
of,
Lewis a little bit of a softball because, I mean,
yeah,
he's been fighting nothing but killers mostly.
he
So,
deserves. Yeah, that's crazy too. Because I was looking at that, like who Lewis has fought, and it's like, wow, dude, you fought like Cormier, you fought Ngannou, you fought Stipe, you fought. I mean,
Cyril
Cyril.
Gane, Curtis Blades,
Wow, dude.
JDS. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, you are, man. All respect to that man, because he is, and he looked great against Ty
Mhm.
too, you know. And it's heavyweight. That's what heavyweight fights should look like, in my mind. Like that's what they should look like.
Yeah.
Where it's just like one guy looks amazing, but then the other guy's just so freaking freakishly strong. And it's so crazy because that neither of them are masters of anyone like anyone discipline. So like none, I don't think between them, if you put their belts together, they're not even like past a blue belt in like jujitsu, right? If I'm not right, and like none of them have done anything in wrestling or boxing or Muay Thai, or they're just fighters.
I think
And
Derek Lewis's base is prison. His
yeah,
jail time is probably the
yeah,
best base for MMA.
uh,
No, yeah, I don't know too much about Taito. Taito Ivasa was a rugby player, actually.
yeah,
So he's got some underlying athleticism that a lot of people
yeah.
probably aren't recognizing because of his physique. But
Sure,
yeah, apparently he was a pretty good rugby player.
I could see it.
Yeah. All right. Let me hit back right here real quick. The third fight of the evening, well, from the top, we are back at the middleweight division when we saw number three ranked Jared Cannonier take on number 4 ranked Derek Brunson. I had Derek Brunson winning this fight. I think you picked Jared Cannonier, so kudos to you on that.
Yep.
Derek Brunson was looking pretty good. It did kind of look like it was going his way. It wasn't definitely looking like a shutout by any means. But Jared Cannonier catches him in the second round, gets him to the ground in a disadvantageous position. I don't remember exactly what the position was. Was it side mount? Whatever it was.
Oh
It almost looked
man,
like he had him could have got him in a
yeah,
crucifix, but before
yeah,
he got him there, the elbows were coming down,
yeah.
and he puts
Oh
Derek
man, those
Brunson out.
elbows. And that side fist was just, I was like, oh, like when he just backhanded him so dirty. Oh man, that was great. And like I did see the elbows and that grounded pound going that way. Um, I think we talked about it at length about how that might go or whatever. But he's, and I think I've talked to you about it privately. Like what I think Eric Cannonier is such a great fighter. He's such a great freaking story. He's such a humble guy, a good person. He works super hard. So, man, I was just so happy for him. But man, that was just such a great like, and it sucked because Derek Brunson's been doing great, and he deserved up until that point a title shot.
Yeah,
And
he was on a killer streak.
for it to go down like that, it just man. But like we talked about it too. Like these two guys would be the top of the heap in any other promotion. They'd be the number one guy, despite whatever.
Good point.
And that fight showed it.
Yeah.
Both of those dudes, Cannonier's going to fight for the title. Um, and Brunson would look like at one point in that fight looked like he's gonna fight for the title.
Mm-hmm.
He just gassed.
Mm-hmm.
He just he just gassed out. It just looked like something happened and his like a switch turned off, or it
Yeah.
just looked like something happened. And that's the thing too, is that um, we have talked about it before, where when you it's one of those things like when you look like when the one guy hits when one fighter hits the other fighter and it's different than what he expected. It looked like it was, oh man, like he doesn't just look scary, like that is scary.
Yeah.
That shit hurt. And that's
Yeah.
how it looked. Like it hit him and then he just was
His whole demeanor
yeah.
changed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's really interesting when you see that. Where for me, it wasn't perfect. I don't have the stats on how many takedowns he got successfully, but Brunson looked like his skill set was paying the bills that night. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? He looked like he
Yeah.
was getting it done in the wrestling, despite getting in a bit of trouble. Jared Cannonier hits really hard, but once he felt that raw power, you know what I mean? That raw power kind of overtook the skill that Derek Brunson was bringing to the fight. Jared Cannonier advances to 15-5. It's another thing though. He has a really his record wouldn't really lead you to believe that he's as good or as much of a contender that he is. He's a real sneaky record.
Mm-hmm.
A product of the MMA lab. He's riding a 2-fight win streak. His last loss was to Robert Whitaker. Obviously, no shame in that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all but confirmed that his next fight will be for the title against Israel Adesanya. Maybe a little bit early to make predictions or breakdowns on that, but do you feel like there are any advantageous routes to victory that Jared Cannonier can take that would give him the best look against Israel Adesanya in a 5-round fight?
This is a movie. That's a movie fight. Cannoneer, and because you just have like this train killer who is just amazing and one of the best strikers to ever walk the planet, and then you have a guy who's like, like you said, look at his record. He's moved up and down in weight, and he's gone through almost everything. He has such a great story, background story. He's such a good guy. He looks the part by all, and he's gonna work. I mean, I'm sure he's probably getting ready to train by this next Monday. He's gonna be in the gym working hard, just the way he is. So,
And a guy who's
man,
definitely, absolutely hungry. I
yeah,
know he made some comments on his after his last fight when he beat Kelvin Gastelum about, you know, struggling to pay his bills and
yeah,
things to that. I don't have the exact quotes ready in front of me, but
uh,
his career disclosed earnings on Tapology, 382 grand, and he's
yeah,
about to be challenging for, and he's 20 fights into his career, and those are his
yeah.
career disclosed earnings, and he's about to be challenging for the middleweight title. So
And
he's
those disclosed earnings, like what I don't think a lot of people realize is that like these guys, part of that goes to their trainer, part of
yes,
that goes to their nutrition.
hmm
It's not they don't. I mean, I guess now with the Performance Institute, which he talked about, he goes to if he can, but which I mean, if you've only made what he's made, which is a lot of money by any stretch of the imagination for most people, but
right.
for what he does, his line of work, that's insane. But a lot of people, I don't know if they realize that it goes to training, it goes to managers, it goes to nutrition. It even goes because they're like contractors, right? So it even goes for
Independent contractors or medical,
yeah,
if they have
medical bills.
any
Yeah,
injuries sustained outside of the cage, that's all on them. If they tear their
yeah,
ACL in training, you're fucked. You know what I mean? Like
yeah,
if it happens in the fight, and I actually kind of suspect that a lot of times when we see a fighter go into a fight with an ACL injury, or afterwards they say like, "Oh, I had an injury" or something like that. I kind of wonder if they might be going in, especially at the lower rankings, or fighters who aren't ranked. I kind of wonder if they're being hush hush about it and saying that they sustained that injury in the fight potentially, so that it could be covered. But
yeah.
I mean, that's a lot of speculation, and it's
Right, right.
fighters who aren't necessarily on the radar. But yeah, so I think Jared Cannonier's hungry. I think he's looking at Israel Adesanya as a guy who's gonna take food off of his table. You know what I mean?
It's so crazy that like a guy like Jared Cannonier. has only made that, and then like if you go to like the PJ Tour in golf and you take like the 80th ranked PJ Tour golfer makes that in a with
Fuck.
royalties and everything makes it in a week.
Makes half of that just through
Yeah.
commercials by holding up a fucking product.
Now,
And
yeah, like Ricky, like say for instance, so you don't know golf, but like there's a guy Ricky Fowler, right? Was a good
I
guy,
don't
good
know
looking guy.
golf. I don't know golf.
No, so he's had his ups and downs, never won a major or anything like that, um, but hasn't done very well. I mean, he makes like 300 grand to get up out of bed to go to a Mercedes commercial, and the guy hasn't won anything.
Damn.
And I mean, Jared Cannonier was just
20,
locked in. Yeah, it was
20
fighting
fights in.
freaking Robert Whitaker. You know what I mean? Like, and has barely got 300 grand to his name like that. I mean, not even to his name. Who knows what he has to his name? But man, that
An
just blows your mind.
Yeah, an untrained person who's maybe saved all of their money and never paid for a day of training in their life could get into a cage with Robert Whitaker and will probably have to pay that much in hospital bills.
Yeah,
You know.
right. Crazy, man. It just blows my mind every single time we talk about it.
So Cannonier breaks Derek Brunson's 5 fight win streak. And Derek Brunson tweeted shortly after the fight that he's in good spirits. These things happened. He made a run at the title, and it didn't work out for him. But then he said that he was going to work himself up for one more fight. So that he's basically announcing his next fight will be for his retirement, which is kind of interesting. I feel like
Yeah,
he
it's a
still has.
weird way to do it.
He has a yeah. Well, for one, I'm never really that big of a fan. I mean, I think it might come down to the fighter in some cases. I'm
Yeah,
not as huge of a fan of when a fighter announces that they're going to retire. I feel like it puts their opponent in a little bit of an interesting position, which we'll get to that with the whole Roxanne Modafferi fight.
yeah,
Um, I kind of respect it a little bit more. I mean, I'm nobody fucking to sit here and talk about what I respect and don't respect with Derek
yeah,
Brunson and elite
yeah,
fighters. But I do kind of I would prefer that they don't announce it till the night of, and then it
yeah,
happens and they start to take their gloves off, during their post fight interview or something like that. And then I throw that argument on its head, and then I'm mad that I didn't know that they were going to
yeah,
retire, and it's like I didn't savor it
yeah,
enough. I didn't
yeah,
appreciate you enough while you were still here. Why didn't you tell me?
yeah.
Um, but I think he's still so high in the rankings. He just dropped to number 4.
Right.
And I think he has a skill set to definitely stick around. I would love to see him. I would love to see him get in there again with Sean Strickland.
Yeah,
Um,
that'd be a good one.
yeah,
I'd love to see that fight. I didn't think it was weird. I did pick Cannonier, and now that we're talking about it, did we talk about Brunson Strickland? Would that be good? That'd be a good one to see, and I'm sure that'd be a really good one to watch.
yeah. Um, but I think that it also kind of works out, like because of what we were talking about earlier with like what do you do with Robert Whitaker from here? What kind of a fight do you give him if he decides, hey, I'm not going anywhere? He did pretty much say that himself. He said, hey, I'm going to destroy the rest of the division. I'm going to be here whether or not Israel likes it or not, and I'm going to fucking earn my shot back, which did get me
Yeah,
pretty pumped up. I kind of forgot that he had said that. So that means if they say, hey, well, you're going to fight Derek Brunson in your next fight, I don't think that that's too bad of a fight. They're not going to be knocking off a contender or a potential future contender in Derek Brunson because he's not going to be around anymore. I
yeah,
think that he kind of lined himself up perfectly for a fight with Robert Whitaker if that's the direction that
sure.
the UFC wants to go.
I mean, you can't argue with it either way. Sean Strickland, Robert Whitaker, you know, would watch probably the same. Would have the same enthusiasm to watch either one of
Yeah.
those two fights. So
Brandon,
yes.
how much did you cry when Roxanne Modafferi left her gloves in the cage after her fight with Casey O'Neill this past Saturday?
Uh, it, tell you what, I asked my wife to leave the room for that moment. Went ahead and took some time. No, I was laughing because like out of respect, because I was tripping out because I've seen a couple of her fights. I mean, anyone who watches ESPN or watches MMA has seen her, whether they like know it or not.
Yeah.
She just fights so much. She's been on like
if you've been around this sport, you've also definitely, at the very least, heard the name Roxanne
Yeah.
Modafferi and probably
Yeah.
thought she was a totally different type of person. You know?
Yeah. Then wait. Yeah. You would expect. Um, but you could tell she was pumped up, and like she came out, and she like you just saw it was just like a little different. It's like she came out a little different than what we had seen in like her past performances and stuff.
Yeah.
And I was like, I was gonna message you like that what was it? And it was just, but it was just in bad taste, and it's probably in bad taste to bring it up now. But like, remember that me, myself, and Irene when he's like all pumped up when he switches and he's like going all crazy, and then they just tase him and then beat the shit out of him.
Yeah.
I was like, man, she looks like that's gonna happen to her, but she got a one of the judges gave the fight to her, right? Or
One
gave
judge
her.
gave her all 3 rounds.
Yeah, that was insane. I didn't
That's
see that.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up. I don't recall what judge it was. Let me see if they have that listed here on her fight page. I don't think they do. But yeah, that was definitely a point of controversy. The right
Mm-hmm.
person won still.
Yeah.
So it's gonna be forgotten about pretty fast. But I thought that was I thought Roxanne Modafferi did a lot better than I was expecting.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
Casey
Casey
O'Neill,
O'Neill's a beast.
yeah, she's definitely one of the girls that I'm looking at closely. Who I think she's like the top of the top three prospects at flyweight, who's definitely going to be challenging for a title probably
Mm-hmm.
in 2023,
Mm-hmm.
alongside Aaron Blanchfield and Manon Fiorot.
Okay.
I expected her to obliterate Roxanne Modafferi. It's kind of
Same.
funny. I mean, I was rooting for Roxy because going into this fight, Casey O'Neill was being extra cold. She wasn't going out of
Yeah.
her way to talk shit about Roxy Modafferi or anything like that. But when
Right.
people were asking her, which I can understand being annoyed about this is one of those things that I said I
Sure.
don't like about when a fighter goes on their on their
Farewell tour.
retirement farewell tour. their
Yeah.
their opponent is going to be asked about that incessantly by the media,
Mm-hmm.
and you could tell that started to kind of get under Casey O'Neill's skin because it's like, hey, look, I'm one of the hottest prospects in this fucking division. I could
It
probably,
boiled over in the post fight.
yeah,
That's for sure.
yeah. She's literally yelling at the crowd like, "Don't fucking boo me." So I thought it was kind of interesting how it played with her mind. She seems like a strong-headed fighter. It doesn't seem like
Mm-hmm.
it's gonna be anything that rattles her. But I certainly wouldn't give every round to Roxy. I gave her
Mm-hmm.
1 round.
Yes. Same.
I thought she did okay in the second round. I thought she was kind of rallying and building momentum. And here's the thing: it's hard to look good against Roxanne Modafferi. Um, Michael Bisping kept saying this over and over, and he kept just kind of like digging himself more into a hole. He was like, "With respect."
I'll
Yeah.
fucking kill that guy. No, I'm just, I'm
he kept saying like, and with all due respect, but the thing is, Roxanne, you know what I mean? He kept on talking about how she's not.
yeah,
The truth is, she sticks to the fundamentals really, really well. You know what I mean? She's
yeah, yeah.
like she said it herself over and over, and it couldn't be truer. Like, um, me and my buddy Mike, we have this thing with MMA fighters where we'll just randomly throw out an MMA fighter and be like, okay, Israel Adesanya. Okay, every fighter is a combination of three factors. They're either a fighter, a martial artist, or an athlete. Some are all three, and they're probably the greatest fucking fighters ever. You know what I mean? And some
Mm-hmm.
are definitely more one than another. Demi and Maya, martial artist. I don't know if
Right.
you agree, but I would say I'd categorize him
Yes.
as a martial
Yeah.
artist.
No. He's a like in every sense of the word. Like he's taken his. I mean, not to start talking about Damien Maya, but his discipline. Arguably, at one point, he was probably one of the greatest Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practitioners alive. At one point, as the Earth was spinning, like at
Yeah,
one point, he was the best
hmm
that's ever lived. I
for
don't think
sure.
anyone would really. So yeah, martial artist for sure.
Yeah, and he's even literally said like, "Hey, I only fight for promote jiu-jitsu and show you don't have to hurt
Yeah.
your opponent." So like, complete martial artist.
Right.
Um, Tyron Woodley. What
Oh
do you think?
man,
Or
athlete.
athlete,
He's an
exactly.
athlete.
You
Yeah.
know what I mean? He's definitely getting by a lot more. Not to say he doesn't put in work like anybody else,
Oh
but
man.
that's a guy who got by a lot on his athleticism.
Right.
And there's plenty of examples of that, obviously. So, anyways, Roxanne Modafferi is completely dialed out into martial artist, and I don't even remember why I started to bring this up, but
Right.
yeah, it's completely like if it's a bar graph, she's completely maxed out on that.
Yeah.
She's hard to look good against.
Right.
She looks and moves like a bad fighter. You know what I
Right.
mean? She
And that's
doesn't.
what I that's what I saw, and she was doing that on, like, when you're playing Street Fighter and you're playing on normal mode and then you throw it on like that turbo mode and they're moving just a little bit faster.
Yeah,
You can tell that adrenaline was on her, and
I
it
feel
made
like
the awkwardness, it kind of amped that awkwardness up a little.
yes, yeah. She doesn't move her head, but she knows to throw more than one punch at a time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Her footwork's
Yeah.
not that horrible. Really,
Yeah.
she has the exact same style as Casey O'Neill, but Casey O'Neill is a much more refined fighter. Um, Roxanne Modafferi wants to get you down, get on top of you, and smother you, and rain down with ground and pound. And it was going to be tough for her to ever do that against Casey O'Neill. I thought
Hmm.
Casey might be giving her. Well, in the first round, I thought, is Casey giving her one round on the feet out of like respect or something like that? And then it kept going, and then the fight was just never going to the ground. It's like, okay,
Right.
maybe Casey O'Neill recognizes that they have the same style, at least in the grappling, and that Roxanne Modafferi might be a little bit more of a problem there than people are giving Roxy credit for. Ultimately, coming away from this fight, I think I have more questions and concerns about Casey O'Neill than I did going into it. I kind of thought like Casey O'Neill is looking like a world beater. You know what I mean? She'll be challenging for the title sometime next year. And now coming into this fight, I'm kind of questioning whether or not she'll get past some of the other fighters in the top five of the division, or even some of the other prospects like an Aaron Blanchfield, which is the fight that I really want to see next for Casey O'Neill.
Yeah.
A lot of people won't agree with me because they're two super hot prospects, and you don't want to see prospects get knocked off so early into
Right.
their UFC run. They're 14 and 15 respectively. I would be okay seeing it right now because I think that they both have plenty of room to recover from whatever loss that they might suffer in that fight. I think WMMA is a little bit more forgiving in that regard.
Yeah. And then if either one were to lose, they would be right back. They could be right back in the title after one or two wins,
And
especially convincing wins right after. So yeah, I don't think you're out of line for saying you should just throw them in there.
yeah, and this is a division that they could move up in really fast
Quickly.
because
Hmm.
you still have your Jessica Eyes hanging around, which does not belong in the top 10 of that division anymore. You still have your Cynthia Calvillos hanging around, who arguably shouldn't be there anymore either. But I think Cynthia Calvillo said that she's going to be moving to 115 anyways. So I still think even if they're not being as active or competitive, these girls are going to jump up the rankings by default, just
Yeah.
because there's girls there who are already booked in fights who are going to be getting knocked off pretty soon. So I think
Sure.
they might have to just prepare for that. These are the divisions where you can talk yourself into contention pretty easily,
Yeah.
and you can do it even faster with results.
Sure. No, I
Yeah.
totally agree with you, man. I think that's a great point. And now that you say it, and I think you had brought it up in the lead up, which I don't think made the last pod, but about Blanchfield and O'Neill getting in there later. But and I think I've heard you talking about it too, just in chats. But it looks like it would be a good one, the next obvious one. And you made a really good point for why Brunson shouldn't fight Strickland. Whereas, like, if
I don't remember what I
uh,
said about that, but
no, you had said that, well, in the previous conversation, that you probably don't want it being known that it's Brunson's last fight, and then he goes in there and then looks good against Sean Strickland, and then you're like, what does that mean? Strickland
oh
isn't
yeah,
worth moving up, and he doesn't deserve a title shot, or he doesn't deserve to fight in a number one contender type deal or interim situation. So yeah, I think that kind of, you talked me out of like Brunson and Strickland for sure.
I see. Cool. Um, did you want to cover any of the other preliminary fights? Anything you wanted to talk about there? Maybe some
Just man, I was
Moicano
so
versus
close
Hernandez.
to yeah. If you want, I mean, God,
Which
yeah,
fight? Remind me again. Which fight was it that
that was
just
the one.
derailed your parlay? Moicano versus Hernandez.
That was the one that ruined it, and it was the one that I thought could. So of all of the fights, that was the least confident I was in betting. It also, um, Alexander's fights, like he's just a can beater. Like you get those guys in the UFC where they you line up these small promotion guys or guys who are making their debuts, and then Alexander's just so great and you just come out and knock the shit out of him. He
Yeah,
looks so good doing that, and it looks like he's built his career on that.
exact.
And
Yeah, I was looking at his record, and he hasn't put two wins in a row together since 2018. And
right,
he's been a one in one fighter, one win, one loss, one win, one loss,
yeah,
and he just kind
yeah.
of always comes up short whenever he breaks into or fights somebody in the top 15 to top 20.
And that's the trap that I get myself into, where I think that I'm better at what I'm doing than I am, and I do that in a lot of like things in my life where like I watch it and then like I see the way someone moves and I see like the way people react to the way they're moving and what they're doing, and I'm like, oh, yeah, I'm gonna do it. And then like it was like such an arrogant bet. This
Mm.
one kind of such a great fighter. He looked like a great fighter. There was a couple moments in that fight where I thought he could have he could have turned it around and won for me, but I mean he is who he is. I should have known better, and that was real arrogant. That was real arrogant because that was the one. I was an arrogance, but I always do that to myself. I always do that to myself. Like if you look at like I took Andrei Arlovsky, and that was just I've seen that guy fight I don't know how many times for so many years, and I'm just like he's gonna win that one. Um, stayed away from Tuivasa and God dang,
Derek Lewis.
why can't Derek Lewis stayed away from that one? Smart, good to do so. Because I would have took Derek Lewis if I had a gun to my head. Um, Knew Israel. I love Robert Whitaker. Knew Israel all the time he was going to win. No, whether the judges gave it to him or not or whatever, they were going to do it. And then just knew Derek Brunson that was going to happen. I just kind of knew that was going to happen, and just seeing Cannonier and how hungry he is, and then why the fuck did I bet? Like, why would I do that? And that's just like the snobbiest thing I could have done, and I did that, and it was just, and I was so mad, and like I was like,
It's
but it was such a weird feeling because I bet all those other fights and won them, and then I lost that one. So I was like, man, you know what you're doing, but then it's like, nah, but you don't
you
though.
flew too close to the sun, man.
Yeah, dude.
And that was the first fight of that parlay, right? So it's like,
I know
or
Arlovsky
our
was the
lot.
first
Oh,
one.
okay, that's right.
Yeah, and then he won by split decision, which was kind of which he looks. I think if the UFC was smart, they would put Tuivasa and Arlovsky in there and give Tuivasa that because I mean, and it just Arlovsky's record justifies it because he's just kept winning. He's had this resurgence and he's kept
Also,
winning.
also a guy who's fought virtually everyone. It's
Yeah,
insane the
yeah,
people that Andrei Arlovsky has been in the
and
cage with.
trained with
Yeah,
and been coached by
training
and
at
just
American Top Team right now, and
yeah,
it's doing well for him. You know what I mean? He's
yeah,
that's another fighter who I forgot who I said this about somewhat. I said this about Glover, where I feel like that experience is actually a feather in his cap. Where a lot of
mm-hmm.
people talk about experience, but it oftentimes it doesn't necessarily amount to a whole lot in mixed martial arts. And with Andrei Arlovsky, it arguably is. Like he looks like
Yeah,
he's evolving as a fighter and knows that
yeah,
he can't do certain things like he used to, or in certain
mm-hmm.
parts don't hold up. He's fighting more like a veteran. Granted, it's against mid-tier competition. You know what I mean? So I think
If
that's
that,
yeah,
if
if
that.
that.
But
Yeah,
he,
I couldn't
I
have
mean,
named the guy he was fighting on Saturday before.
how much does he really choose that, like those matchups though, or is he just taking it because he wants to fight in the UFC and not be that Bellator guy? So
That's a good question. Sometimes with a guy who's been around that long, because yeah, Andrei Arlovsky can get dropped by the UFC today, and he'll have a job instantly. Like that
yeah,
is just too much of a UFC veteran for a Bellator or a PFL to not pick him up and put that in his lower third in his graphic. Make sure in big capital letters, UFC veteran, former UFC champion Andrei Arlovsky. So yeah, it's a good question. Because I mean, sometimes I feel like some of the other guys might stick around because they want a commentary gig or some kind of internal gig with the UFC, like a Forrest Griffin type of ambassador position. But I don't really
mm,
see that panning out for Andrei Arlovsky so much. So,
no,
and he could
yeah,
argue
and
he could arguably go and cash $1 million check in the PFL if he was able to get out of the UFC. So,
yeah, yeah, you're right, and I mean, he looked good, and he's looked good. in his last few fights. And you said training at American Top Team, and a lot of those guys, when you hear interviews with them, seeing him train, and then those are top. I mean, that's top cream of the crop type camp.
Yeah.
And they all say that he looks great, and he's such a good pro. He's so helpful with all the younger guys and doing everything. That's you love to see that.
You definitely don't get the sense that Andrei Arlovsky is a piece of meat at
Right.
American Top Team for upcomers to beat up on or something like that, or to build their confidence. Or, you see that start to happen sometimes. And I feel like, especially at heavyweight, because heavyweight training partners are just, by the nature of the fact that there's just not that many people that are that big and athletic, it's, it's harder to come by. So they're not using him like that. I don't know if you follow American Top Team on social media or anything like that, but they really, they really hold him up as like one of their big stars, like one of their main attractions. So
and they should. I mean, it's sneaky. It's sneaky because I think he's come full circle as being a meme where he was getting knocked out all the time, and then now and we've seen in the heavyweight division, it's so in flux now. Like, I mean, and what if they do put him in there with Tuivasa and he looks better than what because a lot of people, he's fighting in those areas where we saw him fighting in the undercard, where it's just an afterthought for
right.
a lot of people. But then you look at his record, and he's been winning. He's been doing, if not winning, he's been doing great. So
I'm scrolling through his record because I started to think to myself, like, I wouldn't be surprised if he's already fought Tai Tuivasa and we just didn't know. He did. He fought Tai Tuivasa in 2018 and lost a unanimous decision to him.
yeah.
Let's play the who hasn't Andrei Arlovsky fought game.
Okay.
Where
He's fought Fedor, right?
He's fought Fedor.
He lost to Fedor. Who hasn't he fought?
I mean, I'm looking at it right now, so I can't.
Well, I said it to you. I go, he should fight Tai, and then I go, oh, they did, because I remember watching that one.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's even myself. I fell victim to it, like not thinking about it. Who hasn't he fought?
This could end up being too long if I had to let you just kind of like guess
has
too
he
much.
Fought Alistair?
He has.
See, that's kind of makes sense.
Over in 2016, lost by head kick and punches.
Yeah. Oh man. And he didn't fight Cormier, right?
He hadn't fought Cormier. He hasn't fought Cain Velasquez. Let's see.
He fought JDS.
I thought I saw JDS on here, but it looks like he did not fight JDS. No, he fucking ducked JDS.
Damn.
No. Fought Verdum.
Fabricio Verdum. Man, what a great fighter, that guy.
Bigfoot Silva, Kharitonov, Roy Nelson, Ben Rothwell, Anthony Johnson, Brendan Schaub, Antonio Silva again, Travis Brown, Frank Mir, Stipe, Barnett, Ngannou.
I was just gonna say Josh Barnett.
Yeah. He's fought the fucking Jairzinho Rosenstruck.
Keith Haring.
Let me scroll back. He's fought Tom Aspinall. I forgot he already fought Tom Aspinall. Let me see. Let me go back. No Keith Haring from what I can see.
Travis Brown?
Yeah, he fought Travis Brown.
Did you say that already?
He beat Travis Brown by TKO punches round 1 in 2015. So yeah, dude, fucking hats off to Andrei Arlovsky because he's not young either. Like he's 44, I think.
Yeah.
43. Crazy.
And he's gone through it all. He was like the up and coming scary motherfucker. Then he was like, whoa, the guy who could never win in the big fight. And then now he's like that respected veteran, almost like Glover is now. He's just hasn't won the title yet, or crazy.
I'm looking at his fight finishes, his stats, his breakdown, like how many fights he's won by KO, submission, decision. Out of, let's see, how many total is it? Out of 33 wins, how many do you think are KO or TKO?
17.
You exactly.
Yeah.
It's exactly 17.
I wasn't looking at any screens or anything.
I believe you. Yeah, because you
I
do this
look at
through
it
your
well
phone,
because
but
I bet. Yeah,
okay.
I was looking at all this before I bet into. You know, I think like what this a little exercise we're doing. Like I do it in my own head. Like okay, who and then how and then why and then why would he beat this dude? And then you can do it the other way around. But yeah.
Start looking at his losses. Yeah, I would have thought it was less when I scrolled down and I saw 17. That's actually why I asked you. I don't want to just put you on the spot and hit you with random MMA heavyweight
Yeah.
record pop quiz.
Oh, you tried and I passed.
And you passed exceedingly. But I'm just tripping out because I feel I
That
see.
was your like. That was your like. Here's a ball. Perhaps you'd like to bounce it at the moment, and you didn't. And I fucking bounced it and caught it.
Yeah, I see 17, and I think where, I don't feel like
Yeah.
I've seen most of Andrei Arlovsky's career, and I don't. I'm thinking like where are all 17 of those knockouts? Because none of them, not too many of them stick out, other than his like really early knockouts,
Yeah.
But they're there, and I think
he was a scary motherfucker in the beginning.
Yeah.
And then Fedor just like took his soul, like well he did to everybody, but because he was beating Fedor in that was it Affliction or what it was, and then he jumped for some reason to knee him, like he tried that jump knee, and then Fedor just
punched him out of the air, and that led to his first 4-fight losing streak. Fedor, Brett Rogers, Bigfoot Silva, and
Brett the
Sergey.
Grim.
Brett the Grim Rogers, who like ended up like sexually assaulting somebody in an elevator.
Did he?
Pulling his dick out and yeah.
Wow.
He might be dead now. So I mean, R.I.P. Brett Rogers. But I know
the fucking pod just went through.
Yeah, I could be misremembering that and confusing his death with somebody else. But I know for sure he had some kind of episode where he exposed himself to some guys in an elevator or something. He went off the deep end. Yeah, his career kind of fucking tailspin. Let's pull up Brett Rogers' record. What has Brett Rogers been up to? If you had to guess, when was the last year that Brett Rogers competed in mixed martial arts? Do you have a guess?
2019?
No, 2015. So not that far off. It's still more recent than I would have thought. I would have thought that guy.
4 years is a long time in MMA, though.
That is true. Yeah, it's true. Yeah, shit. Fights from 2018 feel like they were fucking forever ago.
Yeah.
I mean, Joanna lost her title in 2018, and I still feel that was so fucking long ago, man.
Oh man.
Anyways, UFC 271. Is there anything else that you wanted to touch on as far as the actual card of UFC 271?
Blood Diamond. Blood Diamond was whack.
Blood Diamond came up very short. Even though Jeremiah Wells came out with
he looked great.
Weird.
And he looked great in that fight, but that was so weird, that run and slip.
Yeah.
And who said it? Who said it? I wish I could give them credit, but they said like, did he did that on purpose to like flip, like what the fuck did that guy just do? Because like I've been in situations like that where like it's like a heated situation and then you think it's going one way and then this guy just like does something weird and you're like, what the fuck? And then they just have you know?
Yeah, so, it looked like he was definitely trying something weird to throw him off of his game. I think he said that he like tripped over his own feet or like rolled his ankle a little bit. So,
and then where that area is, they always, and this is like typical guy who listens to Joe Rogan all the time in commentary, but it's wet right there. In those areas, but it was like one of the first fights, so it couldn't have been, because like sometimes that's where like ice falls or like where they do they put insole or guys are waiting sweating. Yeah, but it was like one of the first fights, so it couldn't have been like damp in that area. So
at least not too much. Yeah, Jeremiah Wells, he doesn't let Blood Diamond, or Mike Mathetha is his real name that I just learned like earlier today. I knew his real name wasn't fucking Blood Diamond, but he doesn't let him out of the first round.
You sent me the documentary, right? Like the Blood Diamond documentary. Well, see, the thing was about that one was, I really like kickboxing, and like I was watching it, and I was like, it doesn't look like what they're telling me he is. Mm-hmm. And then if it's like, and then. Oh, and one thing I wanted to ask you, whether this makes the pod or not, but like, it's good that we brought this up, because, like, is there anybody more successful than Eugene right now, like, in training people? Like, Jesus. Wow, man! Like 12 dudes are
Only
in the UFC, and like most of them are legit contenders.
Kai Kara France,
Yeah,
obviously Alexander Volkanovski.
yeah.
I mean, Dan Hooker's fallen off a lot, but that guy can be a
He could
contender. He could
step
turn it
in at
around really
any time.
fast. Yeah,
Yeah,
and he
and
just
would
moved to
not be
featherweight,
surprised.
so
Yeah.
there's room for him to do that there. Yeah, Eugene Behrman definitely has a wealth of
Who would you
fighters on his
rather
roster.
if you had your choice? If you had, because back in the day, I felt like it was it well, of course, it was out in Albuquerque. Those were the dudes for a long time, and they still are. It's just real weird, but are good. But it's so mixed now. But would it be like, for me, it would be Trevor Whitman,
Trevor Whitman,
like
yeah.
who, yeah, who I would want, like if my daughter was going to do it or my son was going to fight,
Mm-hmm.
and they go, well, Dad, which gym should I go to? But I would say go to Trevor Whitman, but and he'll train you. But like going through a day's worth of training at City Kickboxing must be in fucking insane. And Adesanya mentioned it, like, man, I was there. It was just my basic like chill day, but like things get heated. This guy's fighting this dude, and it just, and plus he kind of, I think he feeds off of that masculine energy. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
those pheromones kind of get to him in a different way. But that's a different kind of story. But but he said like it just like you can't escape it. Like, and then you're just like, fuck it, I'm gonna go. You know, like let's do it.
Another indication that that's like a really tight, like close knit team. Also, all of the COVID stuff that they're dealing with in New Zealand and all the extra precautions and everything, having they're it sounds like they're at least at one point seriously considering moving the entire team to the US, at least until all of this blows over, just because it's more advantageous for them. Most of the fights are happening here. It's easier for them to get their training in, because over there, I mean, there's a barrier to re-entry where you have to quarantine for even longer coming back into the country. Some of that might have changed now, but there's also like literally limits to like
how long you can be away from your home.
Yeah, and how long you can train, like in their own gyms and facilities. You know what I mean? So they're still taking it really, really seriously over there. And the idea that the entire team would consider changing or moving to an entire another country.
It's like that Danaher Death Squad deal where they moved to fucking Puerto Rico or whatever it was, so that they could fucking train jujitsu.
Yeah, it might be a little bit more to why they wanted to move to Puerto Rico, but I'm not going to get into that.
Sure.
So yeah, no, I think you named the two like standout teams right there. Trevor Whitman definitely would be my choice, but I also know that like Trevor Whitman isn't a one size fits all type of.
But then you have to see Rose every day.
That might not be a factor for most people. Would definitely be for me.
Yeah.
And I think like Trevor Whitman also has to decide to train you. You know what I mean? It's not a matter of like, oh, can you afford Trevor Whitman? Oh, but does Trevor Whitman even want to train you? Like, because
he's he's trained Brendan Schaub. I mean, come on.
He's trained. And dude, Brendan Schaub could never go very long without mentioning that he used to train with who's the guy who fought Brock Lesnar? He got
Shane Carwin.
Shane Carwin, yeah.
The 2 beers in his hand.
Yeah, he will never shut up about eating like fucking toasters from Shane Carwin in training. It's like, okay. I don't even think Shane Carwin knows your name, Doc.
It would be interesting. Shane Carwin was pretty cool back in the day. But, was he though? But yeah,
he was an attraction. He was definitely a guy who like the UFC painted to be a certain type of dude, but as soon as he opened his mouth, everyone was like, he's not a bonehead like us, man. Like, what the fuck?
He's like
smart.
A physicist or something, right? Like a scientist.
I don't remember what field, but yeah, he's like has a master's and like he's a full-on scientist. Yeah, basically. I think they were just saying like, oh, he's like actually a rocket scientist, but I don't really trust that era of UFC to really tell us exactly what kind of science he is. It's easier to just tell people like, yeah, he's a rocket scientist. Some news, some headlines to cap off the episode. Just a couple of random like clippings. Okay, they were fucking links on Reddit. Nate Diaz is is really putting his name in the hat. He wants to make that fight with Dustin Poirier happen. And Dustin Poirier has also called him out by name. We've seen it unfolding on Twitter and social media. They're definitely trying to make that fight happen. Nate Diaz probably trying to get out of his contract, wrap it up, get his last fight on his contract so he can get out. And he's been pretty upfront about the fact that he never feels like he's getting paid as much as he should be in the UFC. And I feel like that's only kind of a factor because of how often he competes. I feel like if Nate Diaz for the last 3 to 4 years had been fighting 3 times a year, he probably wouldn't be as in demand right now.
Right.
We'd probably see him.
Because if you see him fight, then you're just like, oh shit, yeah, that's why.
Yeah, he has a lot of really shining moments in his career, a lot of quotable moments. Yeah. But if he was fighting very often, I think we might see him take a lot more L's and his stock drop a little bit. So I mean, more power to him. He's playing smart with his career. But I thought the really interesting thing is that as these talks between Nate Diaz and Dustin Poirier have been ramping up, media, fans have both asked them about Conor McGregor, because both of those guys have a third fight with Conor McGregor just waiting to punch their ticket for that at any moment, and they both just kind of like wrote him off. Nate Diaz said like, nah, that guy's got work to do. Like he's fucking, you know what I mean? That dude's like on a 2-fight losing streak. No one even knows when the fuck that guy's gonna fight. So he sunned him. Yeah. They were asking Dustin Poirier about a potential third fight with Conor McGregor. He sunned him and said, no, I think my time with Conor McGregor is done. And they both had different reasons. I thought it was interesting because Dustin Poirier said, if I fought Conor McGregor again, it would only be for the money. Right. Which is kind of interesting because like that shows that Dustin Poirier still wants to be in this sport for the for his legacy, you know what I mean?
His legacy
for achievements and not only chasing money. Do you believe him though? Is the question.
No, I mean that money's so good, dude. That Conor McGregor money's so good, and Conor's. I don't know. I mean, he's really outside the Cowboy. He's fought some like amazing fighters. You know, it's hard not to look bad. You know, and he doesn't take. That was such an out of character moment for him to fight Cowboy like that. But he's fought so many good guys, and it's kind of. I could see Dustin Poirier saying what he did for Nate Diaz. Conor would beat the shit out of Nate Diaz. I think.
I agree. I think. Yeah. I mean,
he's kind of a big dog, you know, and I think he wouldn't want to fight Conor. I think everyone would want to see that one. I think Conor would be down to do it too, and I think Conor would beat the shit out of him.
Yeah, I would definitely pick Conor against Nate Diaz. I would definitely be curious to see what he looks like coming back after that leg break and see if that hinders his movement or anything. But
Nate Diaz.
Oh, you were saying Poirier and Nate Diaz.
No, Conor would beat the shit out of Nate Diaz. Poirier. Like, would definitely end Nate Diaz's career, and it would not be like ceremonious.
Dude, at this
point, be very sad.
I agree. Yeah, I think that would be bad. I think that's definitely like hey, the ref can't pull him off fast enough type of scenario. At this point, I don't even know if I'd want to. I mean, it's his money to make, but I don't even know if I trust Nate Diaz to get in there with Jake Paul. You know, like as soon as he gets out of his contract, he's going to be angling for those kind of fights. And Nate Diaz was an unconventional and like sneakily good boxer for MMA. I don't think that shit's going to hold for him. Gonna like hold him up very well in actual boxing with a guy who has the kind of power that Jake Paul has. I think I would say I'm going to make a prediction that within 12 months of Nate Diaz leaving the UFC, he'll get knocked out cold by Jake Paul.
Ooh.
I think so because I think he's as soon as he's out of his contract, he's going to fucking chase that fight big. I'll even say this. He's gonna get knocked out. Oh, it's kind of tough. I'm almost kind of wanting to walk it back right now because there's so few people knock out Nate Diaz. But I would almost argue he might get knocked out by anybody in boxing unless they give him an absolute scrub.
Yeah,
and boxing doesn't do that. They don't. When MMA guys come over, they don't give them softballs.
it's a different kind of and it's a different kind of which I couldn't in no way shape or form am qualified to like comment on, but one thing I've talked to like Muay Thai trainers. I talked to my daughter's Muay Thai trainer talking about it, where he had this like kind of crazy freakish power in his pro Muay Thai career, and when he went and fought in Elite XC and MMA, he said he just didn't have it, and he was in his prime and he was hitting these guys, and they weren't going down like that. But he said it's a subconscious thing, where you're just not you're kind. It's always in your head that I'm throwing this punch and they might grab me and pull me down, take me down.
Yeah.
Or they might grab me and take me down. Then I have to think about, transitioning and making sure that I'm in guard and I'm not letting them pass. So like that's all. It's in your head. It's in your head subconsciously.
Mm-hmm.
And the way he had explained it to me was it was just he thinks it's a subconscious thing to where when he was in a Muay Thai fight, he knew that he can swing, and he just had to get out of the way of a counter, and then that was it, and he was okay. So he could kind of put everything into it, knowing that. So with boxing, like those dudes aren't scared of that Nate Diaz is gonna they're gonna misstep. He's gonna grab him, get the back, and choke him out.
Yeah, no boxer is worried that like, oh, the pressure from Nate Diaz or his volume punching is going to do me in, and I'm gonna be too tired to take him down because there's no takedowns about. Yeah, I mean, and I would hate to see it. I don't want to see that. I'm not a Jake Paul fan, despite the fact that I'm on the Jake Paul side as far as like his feud with Dana White over getting fighters paid.
That's what makes it so angry with Dana, because like you're making me agree with Jake Paul.
Exact, and it shouldn't be. I mean, Dana can't engage with Jake Paul in the same way that he thinks he can. Like, I knew when he responded to Jake Paul on social media and challenged him to you can drug test me anytime but I got a drug test. Like, dude, I was like, don't play this game with Jake Paul. Yeah. You have no business like trying to play social media with Jake Paul. So yeah, I wouldn't want to see that. I hope it doesn't happen, and I almost thought I was going to make it through this episode without making a fucking ridiculously spicy take like Jake Paul would knock out Nate Diaz. But that's I feel it in my balls, man. Like you said, a ball tingler.
Yeah. Oh man.
But anyway, yeah.
I could see it happening. I just don't know if. I mean, if Tyron really could do it, then Nate Diaz could easily do it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's yeah. I can see it. I can't. I'm trying to find a hole in that logic, and I can't.
Yeah. Well, man, it's getting late. We were recording this on a Tuesday evening. We're getting pretty awfully close to midnight. So I will let you go. Anybody listening, please, if you want to engage with us or if there's anything you want to hear us talk about on the next episode, you can get at us in the comments. If not, then please subscribe, ring the bell. It'll help us. It'll help you to get all of our content so you won't miss any episodes. And we will see you for our pre-show episode before March 5th for UFC 272, Colby Covington versus George Masvidal. We will be back for that episode. We could be back sooner, but we will for sure be back for that pay-per-view and breaking down all of the goodness that we have to look forward to for UFC 272. And with that, unless you have any closing thoughts, I will say good night, Brandon.
Good night to you, sir.
All right, man. Take care.
Mm-hmm.